Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we have from Ruston Kelly, Pale Through the Window. At this point, you should all know who Ruston Kelly is, and I say that beyond the scope of just this channel, where I've repeatedly heralded him as one of the best acts of the late 2010s and 2020s for 3 absolute slam dunk albums in a row. No, I'm saying that in the perspective in that it seems like his prospects have been greatly improving since the difficult healing journey of The Weakness back in 2023, supporting Noah Khan on tour, falling in love with a new partner, even finding, if not God, some form of spiritual awakening, all of which seems to have invigorated him to have more purpose and structure going forward. But for an artist who built his career from infusing the complicated vulnerability and fluttery textures of emo into indie country music, I was a little concerned how well it would work on the album, and then I remembered that Shape and Destroy, while coming out of a darker place in 2020, was about accepting love into his life. The framing might be a little different 5 years down the line, but he's proven that he can do it and excel in spades. So it should not be surprising at all that this is one of my most hotly anticipated albums of 2025. And now that I've heard it multiple times and will confirm he's indeed 4 for 4 with great albums, it's a project that gives me simultaneously both more and less to say than you would hope as a critic and fan. When it comes to at least the content, it's incredibly easy to discuss because it effectively functions as Shape and Destroy Part 2, reinforcing a lot of the lessons he attempted to learn on The Weakness when finding new love. The arc of the last album centered on the reality of therapy, that you had to be willing to do the work to actually heal, identify your culpability as the architect of your own destruction, and then just keep trudging forward. But eventually you're going to have to deal with the history, the shadow of everything that came before, of which you have been shaped. And thus here, the work changes. Not letting yourself be defined by your trauma, allowing yourself to not have all the answers, allow yourself to be loved. Where it's not surprising that Ruston Kelly has found some form of faith to help fill in the gap if you rip that trauma out, what's there, but also how his new partner isn't as willing to tolerate the self-destructive turmoil in the relationship. Shape and Destroy kind of lived in that place, love amidst the swirling darkness that he hadn't really processed. But where there was a certain self-indulgence in the relationship as his wallow could push him and those around him into messier spaces, this is trying to come out the other side. Recognize that he's got to be better for his partner, especially when doing so leads him to feeling happier at the end and addressing the question of being worthy of that happiness. I really love how the album begins with this spare, ghostly title track saturated in reverb, where he feels haunted by his past, only to keep seeing himself in the window, not Ghost. If they were ghosts, the next song is asking that he gives them up to move on, as the jingling percussion surrounds similar spiritual textures, but the vocal lead is way sharper to accentuate that immediacy. And it adds to the stakes when you see the consequences of a chaotic world and aging on the gentle midnight drive of 3:30, where his normal impulses would push him to a familiar bad place, but you can't go there now. Or how the acoustic ballad with a few ghostly tremolo flourishes on Twisted Root has him try to get to, well, the roots of his past addictions. Or the pedal steel accented ballad Still posing the question of wanting bliss, that willful escape, or actually wanting peace to live with who he was, grow forward. And I really love the snarled twang bouncing off the synth swell of Pickleball by showing the partner who is willing to love him, be with him. But she doesn't want to see him self-destruct over and over again when she loves him and wants the best for him. And she knows that he's the one that's got to make that choice. And there's a really poignant observation on the bass-driven pulse of the penultimate song, Great Wide Open, that I really loved. Because Ruston Kelly built up a perception of a man, an artist who must always be alone and tormented with the hopes that it would give him more roads to travel, more artistic inspiration. But that's myopic. It's self-aggrandizing. It actually shrinks your lens, depriving you of a wider world of experiences, which is just waiting for you to truly go all in, find more people, the rest of your life. And around all of that great introspection, are relatively straightforward love songs, where I can respect that for Ruston Kelly, there is a direct courage and pure, vulnerable sincerity, just being raw and putting it out there, that this is where he is, the songs would have that resonance, but it's also a lane only marginally removed from where he is now, and the lack of tempo or momentum or more cutting turns of phrase feels like the winning formula starting to become a bit threadbare. All Ruston Kelly albums tend to feel a little languid and sprawling, kind of short on momentum, and this is no exception, which feels kind of ironic given Shape and Destroy also really had this issue, and the same justification of the softer stability that comes with being in love. Yet that project had a breadth in its metaphors and symbolism and introspection that helped some of these softer melancholic moments feel more distinct from each other, whereas the love songs here feel a bit sparing in all that detail, although the closer All In really does make up for it. Phenomenal little song. And I'm also not saying that's not the case when we look at the compositions and production. There is some variety. Hell, I would argue that the return of Jared Kay over Nate Mercero brings a consistency to the production balance and the reverb that was kind of missed on The Weakness, even if I will note the ironic juxtaposition in the paratext of this album trying to move forward by going back to an old producer. But when it comes to organic, soft-focused, gently synth-accented acoustic and piano ballads, it feels like the slight shifts in the instrumental palette are starting to pay smaller dividends. I've heard him explore this territory multiple times before. Maybe it feels more pronounced because for the louder songs, there isn't that same immediate muscle or punch to some of the hooks. Pickleball has some great guitar work. It absolutely rocks. It's an album highlight. But the 80s inflected adult contemporary touches of Me and You feel weirdly backwards looking alongside the stock cottagecore twang and musings of House in the Country. But I think I'd take those over whatever the hell was happening with that synthesized gargle on Waiting to Love You. Ruston Kelly has admitted in passing that song was written for another artist, and when that artist didn't cut it, he probably should have taken that as a sign. The energy is absolutely undercut by some of the messy tones and writing that just feels way too broadly sketched coming from Ruston Kelly. But again, that's kind of what makes Pale Through the Window a little bit difficult to untangle, even as a fan. For its formula, you can argue it's doing exactly what it's designed to do, and Ruston Kelly can deliver some heart-wrenching detail and emotional nuance at his best. There's a lot of great songs here. This is an album that feels settled and in love. I wish him all the best for it. It's kind of close to where I'm feeling right now. But either through a combination of slightly less intriguing lyrics or the production formula starting to run a little dry on momentum or novelty, it just doesn't grip me as starkly as his first three albums have. Still quite excellent. It's absolutely worth hearing in a pretty rough year for country, but if we are looking back through that window, finding the ghost, I agree with Kelly here. Probably time to look forward. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I'll admit, I really want to be way more enthusiastic about this, call it one of the best of the year. I don't think it's in that territory. I might even say it's his weakest album, especially as it doesn't really have a standout like Michael Keaton or Breakdown or Holy Shit coming off of The Weakness. And yeah, again, maybe some of it's the formula, just feeling a little too familiar. And given that it feels really primed to hit my emotional core right now, given like similar parallels, I kind of wish it had a little more greater resonance. I don't know, it's not fully there for me. It happens. But hey, leave your comments down there below. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, get albums on my schedule, or just yell at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated, tough times out there, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.